Viktor Frankl said, "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms. To choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's way." This is Finding Human with Sue Jackson. Stay tuned for the next hour as Sue explores the human psyche, what makes us tick, and how to live better, more fulfilled and more meaningful lives. Only on 101.9 High FM.
Hello, this is Sue Jackson on the Finding Human program on High FM, and my guest today is Howard Feldman, and Howard is the CEO of High FM. And I said to him, does he want a list of a few questions that I might be asking? He said, no, thanks. I'd rather just go in like that. I'm not sure if I was asking you for my sake or for your sake.
No, I just think it's so much more fun if we can just have a conversation.
No, it really is. Welcome, Howard.
Thank you.
And I was just thinking about that quote of Viktor Frankl's about attitude. I mean, you certainly have an attitude, and an attitude that people either love or hate,
or less
or
so.
are
Right.
are in between.
Mm-hmm.
Howard, I knew very little about you. I must admit, we come from different worlds and different eras.
Mm-hmm.
And I joined High FM about 12 years ago. And through all these years, I hardly got to know you. We really didn't know the other presenters. And so it's only really been this year that I have found that you are connecting all the presenters. Kathy's a friend of mine, and she did a wonderful, wonderful job. But you took over in November last year. And tell me why you had the need then, the High FM had the need for you to take over.
So I think that every organization, every business has a cycle. And it was Kathy conceived this incredible, ridiculous notion.
And a dream.
Of a dream that was really absurd, I think, in many ways. But many people would have told her it's absurd rather, but she brought this to life. And she brought it to life. She fought for High FM for many, many years. But And over the last couple of years, her and I spoke about maybe I should get more involved, maybe I should, and the timing was never quite right. And then around about August, September last year, I actually was having coffee with a friend, and we were speaking about all sorts of things, and he said, I just think you should just go fully into this. And then, I sat down, I wrote Kathy an email with a proposal. She came back and said, great. The timing was right for her. It was right for Chai. It was right for me. And that was as simple as that. On the basis of pretty much that email, which we extended into a bit of an agreement, we put this together and decided that it was time for somebody else to take the reins of Chai and usher it into the next into its next period.
Well, that's what you have done. We'll be back shortly.
This is Finding Human with Sue Jackson, only on 101.9 High FM.
This is Sue Jackson, and I'm on the Finding Human program, and my guest today is Howard Feldman. Howard, we were talking about you taking over as CEO of High FM, and you have wanted to bring it into more into the media, more into YouTube's podcasts. Tell me what your dreams are, and then I'm going to go back to your previous history before this.
Sure. So the dream for me is to take High FM into the next into the next generation, in the sense that a lot of what happens today happens on social media. We interact, we connect very, very differently today to where we were. That said, radio in of itself has an incredible value, a core value in people's worlds. There was this radio's going to be dead and no one's going to listen to radio. It's really not the case. Radio is very current, it's live, it's immediate, And it's company. So it's not like listening to a podcast that somebody recorded a year ago. Right now, we're talking about current things. People can get involved in conversation. So, and we're company. A lot of our listeners, unfortunately, might live alone. And in that sense, I think we have a huge responsibility to be their company and educate. There's so many aspects. It's educating. It's being responsible. It's being company. It's and I keep saying it, as you know, to the presenters, is we must own our quirkiness, own our fun, own who we are, rather than try and fit into a box, because we're not that.
And that's absolutely true. And I do find, it is company, because every time I go shopping, someone will stop me and recognize my voice or do something. And it's not that they've seen me on YouTubes, but have told me something about Chai FM, either about my program or someone else's program. So definitely we are there for radio. Is there, it's alive, and it's real.
Very, very immediate, which is great.
And, you came in at a particular time when I think we needed a change. First of all, Chai FM was struggling financially, and you came in, you helped with that as well. So you are a part of getting it going again and improving it, and with a lot of other people's help. But that when I think about you tread where angels would never dream of going. And I was listening to quite a few of the different talks of yours, and very amusing. But, you sometimes tread on people's toes, and you get harsh feedback. How do you handle that harsh feedback? I was feeling sorry for you.
Please do not. First of all, I always jokingly say I come from a Yeka or German background, so I confuse criticism with love. But there's actually a lot more to it. I think that, I know that I spent a lot of my life, I won't say people-pleasing, because I was never really a people-pleaser, but living a life and determining my own success, in inverted commas, by expectation, by how other people saw me. So that was how I measured if I was doing well or not. And there came a time in my life around about 15 years ago, maybe a little bit less than that, where I had a couple of incidents. I was a commodity trader doing very, very well financially, traveling the world. We had offices everywhere, living a very fast-paced life. And I had two armed robberies, very, very close to each other. The first one was near my office. The second one actually was as I was driving into my home. And whereas I completely ignored the first one, it was as though it was absolutely nothing. I wasn't going to be slowed down by that sort of nonsense. The second one had a real impact on me, maybe because it was so close together, maybe it was because it was right close to my family. It was outside, and I kept thinking, what if they come inside? And it was aggressive, and it was there were a whole bunch of them, and one had a shotgun, and it was really a very traumatic event. And that was a turning point for me. I chose it to be a turning point. I suffered from terrible PTSD after that, but I decided that the life that I was living wasn't the life that I should be living. I've always loved writing. I've always loved this sort of thing, and I decided now's the time. And I did that. I exited the commodity trading business, and I wrote my first book, Carry On Baggage. I wrote it in like 12 weeks, and that book, although quite harsh in a way, gave me the permission to be who I chose to be, and to start seeing myself as what my mission was in life and what I needed to be doing, not necessarily what other people decided for me because I fit certain criteria. And it was a hard journey. It was a very, very difficult journey. My family had to be on board. My wife had to be on board with that. It was a very, very challenging emotional experience. But what came out from what emerged was a understanding of who I am and an ability to decide for myself what I believe was success, what was important. Obviously, I don't want to come across as arrogant that I was now deciding all of these things, but the reality is I started to look at myself and rely on that. And as a result of which, you can tell me that, as many do, that I'm a genocide baby, killer, supporter, a racist, all sorts of things. It doesn't make me that because I know who I am and I know what I am. And you can go through anything I've ever written my entire life and you'll see the very opposite is true. I've never written anything about, but support of everybody because that's who I am. I'm not an Islamophobe, quite the contrary. And I need to be comfortable with that. So when somebody sends these things insulting me, it really says more about them than it does anything about me.
Yes, it does. And you pick up so often on humor. Howard, I first heard about you when your book came out, Carry On Baggage. And someone said, had I read it and do I know you? And I didn't know you. And they were upset because you had said something about your parents. And I know you got backlash about that.
Plenty.
But then I heard you on a podcast and you said that you actually went to your parents first. And I would like to put that out on the airwaves, that took a lot of courage because you had written this book. You had bared your soul in it. And you went to your parents to go and prepare them, first of all, for it coming out. How was that? Must have been a freeing experience for you.
So it was more than freeing, actually, because what I did was I didn't necessarily prepare them. I went through the book with them, word by word, where it impacted them. And obviously it was painful for them, and I recognize that. Obviously, my intention wasn't to cause them pain, but I changed certain things where my father would say, "Well, that's not accurate, but that is accurate." And in fact, what we found during that process was that it was actually a very, very positive, certainly for me and my parents in terms of our relationship. Maybe they must have held some pain and some hurt from that as well. But actually for our relationship, it was a very, very good one. I always had a good relationship with my mother. With my father was much more complicated, as incredible a person as he was. And I never doubted that, but we had a hard relationship because we couldn't find a common ground. We couldn't find that relationship, and it's always I always urge parents, fathers in particular, because I think mothers find it more naturally. Fathers need to find a language to connect with their children.
And each individual child.
Exact, and that's the point, is each one has to be different. And it was actually incredible. By the time when my father passed away, I had absolutely no unfinished business with him, and I'm so deeply grateful for that.
And it's almost as though you had to write that book in order to get to that space.
Yes.
To clear a lot of the pain that you were holding, and you were probably feeling that you were a bit of a disappointment to him.
Sure.
And he was probably a bit confused by your behavior as well as a parent.
Yeah. Oh, I can tell you he spent half of his life looking at me thinking, who the hell is this guy?
Are you really mine?
Yeah, exactly.
We'll get back to that shortly.
This is Finding Human with Sue Jackson, only on 101.9 High FM.
This is Sue Jackson on the Finding Human program. My guest today is Howard Feldman. If you have any questions for Howard, please would you send them through to 061 895 1019. Howard, going back to you, now you in many ways you fulfilled your father's dream because you became a lawyer. And I know that you have since October the 7th, you have had quite a lot of criticism about being too pro-Israel. And yet they seem to forget, people don't know this about you, that you were one of the protesters against apartheid. Tell me about that time of your life at Varsity.
So I was at Wits in 1988, so, that period. It was a very, very tense time at Wits University, and it was the height of the state of emergency, and and I was involved, of course, with I was doing an undergrad BA in English and law. So a lot of my contemporaries, my friends, were all involved with that. And then many of us moved on to do our LLB. So it was a very, very tense time. It was a very scary time. Obviously, my parents were very, very nervous that
Sure.
I was getting too involved in it, because people were, honestly, they were disappearing at the time. And I won't say that I was certainly the front line of anything, but it became very much part of my student days. And then ultimately I stood for election on the Law Student Council at Wits. And in fact, we were, and I'm incredibly proud of this, that we were the first non-racial Law Student Council that Wits ever had. And today you'd think, all right, great, big deal. But number one, then it was a huge, huge step to take. And not only that, on a personal level, this was the first time that these councils actually had to have people of different backgrounds working together. It was all very well that you were at university with people of different races, but now suddenly you have this law student council that was elected by the student body, and we had the job of trying to unify law school, the law students, and find and plot a way to work together. And it was one of the most incredible, privileged positions and things to be involved with. And then I became the editor of the law student, the law journal in my final year of LLB. So it was just an incredible privilege to be part of that. So that's why when somebody says to me, "Oh, you want to bring back apartheid because you love Israel," okay. They
can say it.
You can say whatever you want. It just doesn't make anything reality.
No.
And that is something that I had to learn. Even when I was writing for News 24 for some years before, I very rarely discussed Israel before October 7th, because I didn't want to be the Israel guy. There was so much to write about in terms of South Africa and our society and trying to improve our lives here. But then when October 7th happened, I realized there were very few people standing up. And therefore, because I am able to, because I am clear on what I believe and what I think now is the time, and that's really when I became that voice. And I remember people like Max Dupree saying, "Howard, like, what's happened to you?" They saw me as I was one of them, but now I'm no longer one of them. You see, now I'm a baby-killing genocide supporter. It's an absurdity, and they have to do that. You see, they've got to take you and put you into that category in a box so that they can close the door there. And that's what they did. They fired me from News 24 so that I can't be heard.
And, I was reading that article about when you were fired from News 24. And what I found very interesting, and actually just going back to your student days and how involved you were, in those days it was very frightening to be that involved, because you could suddenly be collected during the night put into the back of the van and taken away and interrogated. It was a frightening time, and you had great courage in doing that. Here, when the 7th of October happened, you did have to be a voice. And in with News 24, you spoke out, not harshly. I read what you had said. But tell me about the bees. What sort of bee are you? Because you wrote about the bees in their hives. Tell me about the bees.
So I came across the most amazing study, and I loved it because I think it talks to so many of us. It talks about the fact that, bees have a very, very intricate system of communicating with each other. And what they do is they've got this whole little dance. They, a couple of bees go out and they'll find the pollen and the sugar, and then they'll do this little dance and they'll communicate to the other bees where to come to find to find the pollen. But if you think about it, in order to find the pollen, and the sugar, a certain percentage of bees have got to defy the hive. They've got to defy the swarm, really, because they're going to have to go out and find different things. And I can't recall whether it was 10%, 20%, whatever percentage it was a relatively small number of bees defy or don't adhere to the very strict rules of the hive. And so they land up being the ones that discover new things. And my belief is that many of us writers, whether it's writers, musicians, poets, radio presenters, people, there's a certain entrepreneurs, very, very much so, actually defy the norm. We don't go to university, then work for a company for 30 years and then retire. We need those people because those people actually do the job that is that is needed. But there's also a small percentage of people, and I'm not saying me and Elon Musk, but it's a type that actually defies the norm. And those are the ones that, they make us uncomfortable. They're a little bit out there, but they have the ability to show us something different to what we've known.
Absolutely. And, you said something and I actually heard differently, but it fits in with what you're saying because you were saying about the honey and the sugar. I thought you said the sugar.
That too. I think you definitely need an element of lunacy, maybe.
Absolutely. And, just going back to News 24, a lot of my family were great readers of yours and not on the Jewish faith.
Yes, yes.
And so they were really upset when you were no longer there. But, Howard, one of the things that you brought into us, and I actually brought a copy of it here, you said to us as things were really getting a bit rough with Israel, and you said you really felt that we needed to make sure that what we said was for not just our immediate Jewish listenership, but all listeners, and realize that we needed to be very careful of how we put our words across and what we said, to stick with the truth, certainly, but be careful of how we said it. And one of the things you also said, that you sent this out in June, and you were saying about Father's Day, and then you also sent out one about the best kind of anticlimax. Do you remember?
I don't.
Okay. Well, this was on the. Let me just see the date. It was after. We were expecting major riots a few weeks ago.
Yes.
And you prepared everybody, you prepared people on air, you told us to not feed into the drama, but people can be aware of it if they brought it up. And you calmed things. And I wanted to just say to you that you and Anton Meyerberg, in the COVID times, you calmed so much fear. Can we just go back to that time? What decided you?
That was also such a
strange. You've been with the Morning Mayhem show,
right,
for 10 years or even longer.
Probably about that.
Yeah, I think it was almost the same time as I started.
Yeah.
And And so you're very well known through that. And then what made you decide you were going to become a voice
Yes,
to calm?
so this COVID thing was starting, and I have an interest always in these medical things. I'm close with Dr. Anton Marburg, and at that stage I was the CMO, the head of marketing at Synthesis Software Technologies, and I had this idea that we should be educating people about it, especially because I've got the ability to interview. He's got the actual knowledge, and I went to the CEO and the directors at Synthesis, and I said, I've got a marketing idea that's a terrible marketing idea because it's not what Synthesis does. It's potentially going to confuse people completely. I mean, they're an incredible bespoke software company. And I said, but I'd love you to put your name on it, sponsor this, because there were obviously costs associated with it. And let's just see where this goes, because there's definitely confusion, there's misinformation. Here I've got somebody on the front lines who also doesn't know much, but would have to upskill as more knowledge was becoming available. And they said, go for it, which was actually incredible. And I think it's so important to give them the recognition for that. And every week, every single Sunday, of course, we started in person, and then we had to isolate, and then many times he was actually at the hospital where we would chat. But every Sunday, we did the Synthesis COVID podcast, and it was incredibly powerful because we, along with all of our listeners, were going through this journey together as he was discovering more things, as we were hearing more about vaccines, and he could cut away all of the nonsense. And even though it was a really terrible time, people could see that this was okay, that life was carrying on, and we could share a joke, and we could have a little bit of banter, the two of us, even though it was a hard time. And we had over 1 million viewers. It really did become something incredible, and I'm so grateful that I don't know why I grabbed it and we ran with it.
And it was incredible, unbelievably calming for not only South African listeners, but worldwide. People were tuning in to find out. There was one that I think you were sitting on one section of Plet, on the beach of Plet,
yes,
and Anton was in another section, and the two of you were on Zoom.
Yeah,
and the waves were breaking, and the two of you were talking about COVID. Do you remember?
I do. That was, in fact, one of our most popular episodes, because they had just announced, in their idiocy, the government had just announced that they were closing beaches, and that was the last day we could be on the beach. And it was absurd because you were out in the fresh air, the kids were out in the fresh air, but there was so much stupidity around it and we were angry.
It was very funny with that social distancing on the beach.
Absurd.
God,
absolutely
that was so
ridiculous.
Funny. And then, of course, 7th of October hit. And what did you feel that your role was then?
So because I already had this channel at Chai, and I was already I was already writing for a number of publications. I decided that my job here, as it was with COVID, but my job here was to educate people. And that's what I did. I spoke about some of the realities that our press here aren't reporting and didn't report. They sanitized a lot of what happened on October 7th and following, and simply leapt ahead to focus on everything Israel was doing. And I felt it was my duty, and I still feel it's my duty, to bring truth. People might like it, they might not like it, all cool. But that is the truth. And that, I believe, very much is my responsibility.
And you did a wonderful interview with Douglas Murray.
Yes.
Many people were there hearing it. I listened to the podcast, the YouTube. And so you've had very important people on your program, willing to come and talk to you, which also says a lot about you and about Chai FM and who you're actually reaching. If I had to say to you, what were you like when you were in the commodity world? Did you like yourself then compared to who you are now? Or did you feel it all came together to bring you to where you are?
So when I wrote my book, my brother, as only a brother could say, is, Howard, you weren't exactly the wolf of Wall Street, so don't paint yourself to be worse than you were. So I don't believe I was. I don't believe I was awful. Some friends of mine do tell me that I had a certain arrogance about me, but I like to think I still have that, or to some extent. But no, I didn't particularly like. Well, what I found was I was losing myself. Not that I didn't like myself. I was getting further and further away from who I wanted to be, and with that came the distinct feeling that I was wasting my own potential, that we're in this world for however long we're in this world. Was that really my mission? Was that really, after 120 years, what I wanted to have accomplished? And I knew to my very core that more was expected of me.
So you are feeling now that you are fulfilling that part of you that needed to be
absolutely
be different.
Yes,
and it is different. You
very,
are very
very
different. Thank you, Craig. We're going to be paying for the adverts.
This is Finding Human with Sue Jackson, only on 101.9 High FM.
Hello, this is Sue Jackson on the Finding Human program. My guest today is Howard Feldman, and you're about to hear about a visitor that he had on Shabbos.
Okay, so I think I'm ready to talk about this. It wasn't a good experience, and sensitive viewers might want to scroll on to something else. Yesterday afternoon, lying in bed, I wasn't wearing my glasses, I was reading. My wife next to me doing the same, and all of a sudden I sensed movement. A bird flew into the house, downstairs, up the stairs, into our bedroom, chose our bedroom, swooped low over our bed, and deposited its load all over me. Eyes, nose, mouth. I screamed. Skrius soos 'n meisie I did. I ran to the bathroom, spitting it out. I put my head under the tap for about 10 minutes. I used mouthwash. It wasn't good. Came back to the bedroom. My wife had now, by this stage, stripped the sheets and my cushion because it was covered in this. Penny, the poodle, go Penny, had actually neutralized the perpetrator, neutralized it completely. Anyway, I came back and I was finished. I said, is it all off? I still wasn't wearing my glasses. Or is it all off my face? And she said, yeah, but take your t-shirt off. It was also covered. I mean, that was a drone bird. It doesn't happen. Inside the house, downstairs, flies upstairs, chooses our bedroom, swoops down over our bed and attacks me. Anyway, about 10 minutes later, it was about an hour before Shabbat ended, my son came back and he didn't help because he was laughing so much that I actually thought he was going to have a heart attack. And the minute Shabbat came out, I was Googling, am I going to die? My wife was Googling the mystical Judaic meaning of this, which really kind of does highlight where we're both at. But anyway, I messaged, of course, my friend and Dr. Anton Marburg, who didn't seem to take it seriously at all. I even asked him if we need to bag the bird, for testing and stuff. I mean, this is not something to be fooled with. ChatGPT itself said, "Don't panic, but act promptly." Yeah, that's what they said. Anyway, it was completely traumatizing, and I'm grateful at this point to still be around. I honestly thought I'd wake up dead. I'm looking out for a persistent cough or swollen eyes, but I think so far we're okay. But I wanted to share that complete bit of trauma with you. If you understand what this means, well, don't tell me, because that was wild.
This is Finding Human with Sue Jackson, only on 101.9 High FM.
Hello, this is Sue, and I'm back with Howard Feldman. And I sent that Facebook post through to Craig and Vusi and Makundi, and I said, please play this after the third advert, but don't let Howard know. So his face just now. What did you think when
I was thinking, what visitor? I don't remember a visitor. Very funny. Good.
You are very funny, I must admit, Howard. Would you say that you also are a panicker about things like that?
Yes.
And thank goodness for Penny.
Exactly.
The dog.
Thank God for Penny, erecting a statue to her. But no, you know what? I was telling, I had Cheryl Cohen, the psychologist, on my show today talking about panic and things. And I said that humor is emotional turmoil remembered in tranquility.
Wow, that's fantastic.
Which really is, because that's a lot of my own style. Is I go through this insane experience, emotional turmoil, and then when I speak about it or write about it, that's when I can start to bring a bit of myself back into it. And it's just a way of processing it, I guess.
And, if you want to see Howard's post, go onto his LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook. You'll find him on all those different platforms. Howard, you've written 3 books. Tell me about the other 2.
So the first book, as you've mentioned, was Carry On Baggage. The second book was Tightrope, the story of Circus South Africa. And that is really a collection of a lot of articles written during the Zuma period. And it was to try and capture that ridiculously mad, crazy time in South Africa.
Your articles?
Yes, my own articles. And so it was more of a compilation. And then the third book is called Smile Damn It, which is a book about resilience, about positivity, about the difference between real objective positivity versus this toxic positivity where everything is wonderful, but actually we still got to deal with difficult things, and it was to try and bring perspective around that. So they're all quite different, I guess, but all of them just were things that I became interested and fascinated by.
And what has the feedback been for the other 2?
So the second one was decent, but a compilation of articles never sells the way a completely original work does. So I got some very good reviews on that, but it wasn't as much out there as the others. And then the response to Smile Damn It has been extremely, extremely positive, and I'm very grateful for that.
And how can people access those books?
They're on Takealot. They've always sold through exclusive as well. I'm not sure if they've got stock or not. I haven't looked for a while, but Takealot definitely will have them. And
what is your next project?
I have to write without any question. And I have kind of started, but not in the way that I like to start. In other words, when I start something, I'm in it. So I've only dabbled. I'm not there yet, but a murder mystery.
Oh.
I have to write fiction, and I have to write a cozy crime murder mystery.
Oh, well, that's exciting. That's so
I
different.
think so. Very different, very. But I absolutely love murder mysteries. I love the nuance around it. I like the characters and the puzzle, because it's all really a puzzle as you put everything together. So, yeah.
That's so interesting. And, thinking about that, your life has been a puzzle. Because at one stage, you left South Africa and then chose to come back. Now, that takes incredible courage.
Yes.
So what happened to that piece of the puzzle that you took out from America or out of South Africa?
Right. So we actually went to live in Israel and lived there for 3.5 years. And then I was asked in the commodity trading environment to head up a project in New York. So we went to New York and we lived there for just over a year. That project ended and we had to make a decision about whether to stay in America, go back to Israel, or come back to South Africa. I hated living in New York. I love the energy of the city. I love being a tourist there. I love working there. But I didn't like what my family was becoming there. I didn't like who I was becoming there. As you can tell, it's almost a theme about living an authentic life. And I found we lived in an area where everybody looked religious, everybody looked wealthy, everybody looked happy, but just beneath the veneer was so much insecurity and so much pretense that I found it very, very, very hard to live with. I battle with people who are not authentic because I don't care who you are, but just be real, and then then at least I know who you are. And I felt very strongly about coming back here because my actual commodity trading business was here in South Africa. My wife was less happy. It was hard for her. She was actually very happy in New York, but we came back, and it was really the best decision we ever made.
And one of the things that I read that you'd written about that time was your brother came over to visit and your parents. And you said that your children were all in their designer outfits and his children were in normal South African Nazi outfits. And even that
So, in fact,
struck
they didn't.
you that wasn't authentic for your kids.
So what happened was, in fact, they didn't come to visit. We joined them in Israel for Pesach. They'd come from South Africa. We had come from New York. And I looked at our kids sort of, standing a little bit to the side in their magnificent outfits. And the other kids all just doing what kids should be doing. And I turned around to my wife and I said, who are we kidding? Like, is this really what we want, who we want our kids to be? And it really wasn't. And that was a bit of a turning point for me. That started my whole process and thought around this.
High FM, your station of choice since 2008.
Owning properties in Israel can be a great investment, but challenging to manage if you're based abroad. The Blue Agency will manage every aspect of your property, finding and vetting tenants, maintaining your property and getting it rental ready, negotiating contracts and collecting rentals, reporting back to you regularly. The Blue Agency has built a reputation for trust and confidentiality over 20 years. The Blue Agency, your Israel property is in good hands. Contact us at www.theblueagency.com.
This is Finding Human with Sue Jackson, only on 101.9 High FM.
This is Sue, and I'm back with Howard Feldman, and a few messages have come through. And Howard, won't you read them out for me?
Okay, Gisela says, hi, Howard, you do a super job. I love the station. Thank you for that. Joseph Kumape says, what did he say? Good morning, I'm enjoying your show. I can identify with Howard, former VIT student myself. Enjoy Howard's personality, not too serious, not too relaxed. This is the radio that I have always dreamed about. Renee says, wow, what an incredible interview, Howard. You are so worldly. I never knew. You are also spiritual. Yosh, but don't go telling people that, Renee. This is between you and, all right. And then here's a question from Simone. Sue, please ask Howard, are you really not sensitive? Everybody has a sensitive part of themselves. So Simone, actually when it comes to to anybody sort of insulting me, that sort of thing. It actually genuinely doesn't bother me.
Actually lifts you up and gives you
does.
some impetus
I know,
there.
which is not a good thing. So, I don't know what the psychologist would say about that. But no, it really, really doesn't bother me. I am sensitive when it comes to relationships close to me. I am actually that, I definitely am. And I often do find myself sensitive with our community when sometimes they either can't see a bigger picture or they'll attack me for something, and I want to say to them, like, are you a moron? Like, surely, zoom out a little bit and understand why I'm saying what I'm saying or why I'm doing. So maybe because I expect more from our community, I can be sensitive around that. But generally not. I am only sensitive to people close to me.
I have seen that in you, actually. And, if you want to read some of Howard's articles, just let me tell you a few of the names, because, they in themselves are amusing. Not all heroes wear capes. Some bring gloves. Missing the joke. What elephants don't know. Being considerate. Rules, okay? The peptides we really need, the world's least prepared protester. Now, I want to go on to that, the world's least prepared protester. But how Craig's been telling us to actually wrap up. How would you, so we'll do another interview on that.
Happy.
But Howard, what would you like to say to end this session?
Really, that the journey to live authentically is not always an easy one, but it is so deeply rewarding when you can be comfortable really in your own skin. And it's not easy to get there, and it's not always as simple as I make it sound, because it's a challenge, but it is a challenge well worth facing.
And what about, you've got such a huge variety of presenters. Now, I'm sure each one challenges you in a different way. What message would you like to give to your presenters?
In truth, exactly the same message. Bring yourself to the studio. Be your funny, quirky, ridiculous, serious self, because we represent so many aspects of our community, of South Africa, people listening around the world. All people want is to be able to connect with something real. So my message to our presenters is exactly that. Bring your full selves to radio, and don't think you have to be what somebody else sounds like on the radio. Just be you, and just be you brilliantly.
Wonderful. And also know that Sue will be interviewing you.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
I would like to end with this. Thank you, first of all, Howard, for
you.
sharing
What a great
this time with me. It's been great. Elie Wiesel said, just as a man cannot live without dreams, he cannot live without hope. So let's live in a world with dreams and with hope, and let Chai FM go from strength to strength. Thank you so much, Craig. Thank you, Vusi. Thank you, Makundi. And thank you, Howard.